Welcome everyone to the new Brew podcast, Learning Circles with Dr. Sandy. My name is Dr. Sandy, and we're very fortunate today to have Tricia Fuglestad from actually America in Chicago. It's 6:30 at night for them, and it's 9:30 in the morning for us. She's an amazing art educator, focusing on the year 5, or kindergarten to year 5 STEAM. And this one that really always interests me the most actually is this trans digital and the connection with empathy. So before we start today, where I live is in the Duckin country. We would like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional owners throughout Australia and acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We wish to pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. So Tricia, over to you, because I think, you're the expert and we'll learn lots to learn from you.
Awesome. Thank you. So happy to be here. So I am Tricia Fuglestad and I'm a K-5 art teacher. So I'm an elementary school teacher and I'm in a suburb of Chicago, which is in Illinois in the United States. And I'm not used to saying all that. I'm used to just saying Chicago and everybody knows. But it's awesome to be thinking more globally here. We are doing a lot of art that we call transdigital, which is art that has some physical component and a digital component. So today I wanted to talk to you about how we're incorporating social emotional learning into the art projects that we're doing with my elementary students. So social emotional learning is something that is not just a buzz phrase, which, that happens a lot in education, lots of fads. And but I would say social emotional learning now is so important and we're embracing it so readily because of what has been happening with COVID. And so last year, the teachers in my district went through some training on how they were going to implement social emotional learning. And there is a curriculum for it that I'm, as the art teacher, not necessarily teaching, but I try to latch on to some of the concepts and incorporate as many of them as I can when it makes sense. So I've been designing some lessons along those lines. So one of the things that I want students to do is learn how to identify their emotions. I want them to figure out how they can express their emotions, which I think is easy to connect how artists express feelings in their art. And so that's a natural connection for the art room. And then we can talk about managing emotions. As we're creating art that shows emotion, how do we deal with it in our own life? That's a natural connection too. So the 3 lessons I want to look at are the color monster lesson, the emotional robots, and the kindness campaign. So these are all taught at different grade levels. The color monster is a 3rd grade lesson. Emotional robots, I did a variation on this in 1st grade, and the kindness campaign was something that I did with 4th graders. So I wanted to start with this image. This image is 2nd grade drawings of George Washington, which, if you're not from the United States, you might not know who he is. I don't know, but George Washington is the first president of the United States. And so we spend a lot of time in elementary school thinking about who he is and the impact that he's had on our country, and we celebrate his birthday. And so I thought that we could do a portrait of him in 2nd grade. And so at one point in our lesson, before we started painting George Washington, I took pictures of their marker drawings. And it was the step right before they painted And so I thought, you know, we might lose all these really great details. So I'm going to photograph them first. And then when we paint them, we might lose those details, but we can reference these photos and then redraw those details back. But as I was looking at these photos, I was thinking about how the students, without intention and unintentionally, created lots of very subtle emotions with the way they drew the eyes and the mouth and the tilt of the head. And so we did a little exercise in which we tried to look at those expressions and name them in some way. Now, these were second graders, and their vocabulary for naming emotions was kind of small, you know, so we pulled out their ideas and then we tried to come up with a name that fit better, perhaps, or was more detailed. And so we've got words like impatient and regretful, apologetic, skeptical, and hesitant. And it was so fun to look at these with those new eyes, like what accidental expression did these George Washington portraits have? So in doing this, we increased our vocabulary, just thinking about what does an artist do to put emotion in their work, and what are some other words to label it with. So let's take a look at the color monster. The color monster project in 3rd grade was based on a book called The Color Monster, where the monster started out very confused. It had every feeling. And so it was scrambled in color too. And so when I started this lesson with my 3rd graders, I said, you don't always get to pick your feelings. So we randomly picked a color out of a hat. And when they picked that color, they were, in a way, assigned an emotion to try to replicate. So their color monster ended up being a cardboard little creature with movable parts. They did a fixed expression on the face that tried to match the emotion that they were replicating. And then they had movable arms, movable legs, and movable eyebrows. We thought that eyebrows would be helpful for expressing emotion. So we thought about how different kinds of tilts on your eyebrows could change the expression on your face. So we were focusing there on putting color and feelings together with expressions on faces. But then we took it to another level because we wanted to make it transdigital. And in this step, we gathered together in groups and we did stop motion animation. So they worked collaboratively. We have a director, a photographer, and animator, and they came up with a plan that would help dynamically express the emotion that their color monster would have. So their angry color monster might throw a little fit, or their happy color monster might jump for joy. And they could show that with stop motion animation. So I have some of their examples here. So the kids were learning in this project to make a face that expressed emotion, a color that matches an emotion, and then to dynamically express emotion through stop motion animation. But then I also asked them, what advice would you give your color monster for managing or like helping them transition from that emotion down to something else that's more a comfortable emotion? So many of them talked about how if they are fearful, what they can do to help them feel better, or if, you know, and they had some practical advice for their color monster, like go find your family member and give them a hug. That was some of their suggestions. It was so sweet. So they reflected and managing their emotions after creating this project. But another thing I did, because I teach kindergarten all the way through 5th grade, is I thought, why don't I take their work and teach the rest of the school something about expressing emotion, by, and also at the same time demonstrating how augmented reality works. So I took a trigger image of their art and connected it with their animation and made it come to life with augmented reality. And so at the end of class, I would spend 1 minute with the class and I would demonstrate a few samples, and it looked something like this. I would have a little sign out, and then I would scan their work and they could see the color monster that's scared, or the color monster that's calm, or the color monster that's happy, and give us a chance to discuss what those emotions were before they left from the art room at that time. All right, so let's take a look at the expressive robots. This is a project I did with first graders. So I had them do a very simple drawing of a robot. It was a portrait though. And so it was mostly a face and shoulders and a little bit of the top of their body. But we left the body blank for a reason. So the first thing that they did is they tried to think of any emotion they wanted to express and how they would express it on a robot. So we actually looked at the artwork of Rembrandt. He was very expressive in his paintings. So we found a collection of his faces and we tried to sketch, what does anger look like? What does happiness look like? What does surprise look like? And we did lots of sketches first before we applied it to our robot drawing. Now these robot drawings had the empty spot on their body because we wanted to fill it with a symbol. And that symbol was going to happen through animation. So their robot is on a sheet of paper. And then what we did is we pulled out our class set of iPads and we used the Do Ink animation and drawing app. We thought of a symbol that represents the feeling we're trying to express. And then we drew it in 3 frames. Super simple, first grade. We did small, medium, and large of that one symbol, and then let it loop endlessly. Here's an example of what that looked like. So this is a loving robot. He has a loving expression and a loving symbol that goes small, medium, and large from the iPad. So in order to experience this piece of art, you have to have both digital and physical. So we made a recording of that, and we asked the students to use their voice to pick a word that expressed their robot's feelings. So you're going to see some samples and hear their voices as they say what their robot is feeling. And I want you to notice how each one of these examples, I'm only going to show you a couple, like 10, but each one of them picked a different word because we were practicing our vocabulary also, so that we weren't all saying the same simple words for our feelings. So here we go.
My robot is very mad. My robot is happy. My robot is depressed. My robot is very hopeful. My robot is really friendly. My robot is disappointing. My robot is raging. My robot is nervous.
So one thing that I thought of after I did this project is what I'm really teaching the students is that what it looks like to be authentic, what you show on the outside matches how you feel on the inside. And now that I've reflected and thought about that, I'm going to make sure that's more intentional the next time I teach this, because that's what we are seeing here. The expression on the outside matches the symbol that glows from the inside.
Was there any particular challenge that slowed you down with the process when you're talking about that with the students? Are they willing to be like vulnerable, for example?
Oh yeah, the only challenge that we had with those little first graders was I did a demonstration, and I picked angry, I think. And I had a cloud symbol, and everybody wanted to do an angry robot with the cloud symbol or something. And so that was the only issue, is trying to stretch them out away from my example. So that I got a little smarter about that the next time, because I have 4 sections of first grade. But there was one movie that we had where everybody needed a synonym for the word angry, because everybody, like, how many different words can we come up with for that?
Because I find students want to copy me, so that's why, and so I'm always mindful, because we call that cookie cutting in Australia, where they want to do exactly like you, and they have to be exactly like you and copy like you. But I think the way you design and giving the freedom to change the eyes and things like that, that gives them the chance to change that dynamic where they're choosing the emotion. And it's really, really powerful.
And I really love the record of their voice saying their robot's feelings.
It's gorgeous.
And just having that one moment. We filmed all that together, so we were all like in a circle listening to each other and applauding each other when we got it right, because it was a tense moment. The moment that you spoke what your robot feels. I don't know why. It was very tense, but we were so excited when we got it right.
It's beautiful.
So yeah, it turned out so nice. So, and that leads me to the kindness campaign, which is the lesson that I did with 4th graders. Now, this lesson was written up in the STEM magazine that
Yes.
Dr. Sandy is a part of, right?
Yes.
So this is a very, it was a big project that we spent weeks on this, but the intention was that students would craft a kindness message that was unique, that they really believed in, and then they would use their voice to speak it, and it would also become a printed piece of art. They would have animated wings that represented or symbolic of kindness, and it would be set up with augmented reality so it could come to life. So with that in mind, crafting the message, the first time I taught something like this, we didn't spend as much time on crafting the message, and we put so much work into the process with messages that kids didn't really believe in or had thrown together. So we were much more intentional about how to craft the message this time. We spent time reading children's books to each other, and then we worked on trying to pull the message, the kindness messages, out of the books, and then try to find a unique message. At each table there were 4 kids, so we needed 4 unique messages from it. But then once we had our message, we needed to check and see if anybody else in the class had that same message. So we had to jigsaw it. We had to go travel around the room, find out what everybody's messages were, then find out where there's doubles and help brainstorm new ideas.
Jigsaw, what you might explain what jigsaw means, because some pre-service teachers wouldn't know what that means yet. How do you do?
I don't know if I'm using that word correctly in this case.
You are. Yes, you are. I teach it as well. So there's different ways of doing it. But just explain how you explain jigsaw.
Well, in this case, other kids, oh gosh, I feel insecure about whether or not I'm using it correctly.
No,
so,
you're fine. You're fine.
You're fine. I'm just saying, in this particular case, what was happening at every table needed to be unique. So we were learning from each group. So each group had to present what their messages were to each other. And then we were able to get a sense of what everybody's message was in the class and if ours were unique. And in the process, I think kids were getting new ideas for what their messages would be. And they just kind of scratched off that and said, can I come up with a new one? And just the whole process helped them get something that they really believed in, and we talked about, when's the last time somebody did something really kind and it affected you? Or when was something kind of mean and you wish it was different? What would you have wished different, in that situation? And so we told our stories, and that helped us craft those messages too. And when we got to the step where we filmed, it was a green screen video that overlaid our still image that would come to life with augmented reality, and the audio really mattered. The first time we ever did this lesson, it was only a still image, and we realized that the little ones were not getting those messages because they were emergent readers. So they weren't able to read the kindness messages when they were on display. So we thought the way to fix that was to have the actual author of the message be in it and speak it. And so here we are recording that message, and the audio really mattered, and we don't have a separate sound studio or anything. This is just the front of the art room. So what we ended up doing is all of the students that were waiting their turn were working on making cards for kids that were hospitalized. So they were putting kindness into action at the tables, working quietly while kids were taking their turn, speaking their kindness message.
It's beautiful, actually.
I
think that, I mean, we know in the science, when you're having a hard time in life, if you actually help others, when you're having a hard time, it actually helps your own brain, and your own brain actually gets hormones because of it. So when you are having a hard time, we should actually help others, which I think some people think, oh, I shouldn't do that. I should shrink down and so on. But in actual fact, MRIs tell us that, yeah, if you actually help others when you're having a hard time, you'll actually find your brain is more effective. So, and it's sort of like you've got to have a bit of a leap in faith to do it. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
I feel like it wasn't busy work to those kids. They were super excited about what they were making and thinking about. They came up with the sweetest things to say to strangers, and they sent off those cards to kids. And I think it meant a lot. I imagine that it means a lot to be a kid getting a card from a kid when you're having a hard time.
100%.
So last year, those students were fifth graders, and it was supposed to be the culminating moment of the kindness campaign. Their work was printed professionally and hung up all over the art room. And the plan was that we would be able to scan it and learn learn these kindness messages from the big kids, because they would be fifth graders, and all of the little ones and from kindergarten up would learn from them. But last year we had a full year of being scrambled up with our COVID teaching experience and learning experience. So we started remote, and then we went hybrid, then we tried full in person, but there was always kids on Zoom. And so for a while, I wasn't even in the room. I was teaching remotely, and then I couldn't teach in person. And so I was on a leave for a little bit, and then I came back. So it was a very crazy year, and I knew it was going to be an unpredictable year. So what I did is, after I hung up all the art in the summer, well, at the beginning of the school year, I filmed little segments. I scanned it and let the images come to life. And I filmed 12 episodes of, we called it Fugle Vision, where we learn about kindness. So these little episodes were shared at the beginning of art class from kindergarten through fifth grade. So I would log on Zoom. We'd start our theme song, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and then we would start a kindness episode, and then we would talk about what we learned, and then we do our art project. So we used this in a way that everybody could learn from it. Even the kids that were sitting in the classroom could watch this video, because nobody was really getting up out of their seat and scanning things, and our class set of iPads was in the hands of kindergartners anyway, so like everything was scrambled up. But this actually became a really wonderful teaching tool. So I'm going to give you a peek at one of the episodes. All right, let's hear some more about kindness. Let's go to the magic wall of kindness.
A kind person compliments differences in people.
A kind person waits patiently for their turn.
Look it! I'm not the only one who loves this advice.
A kind person divides up the candy equally. Kindness means helping others when they need you.
Aw, these kids are my hero. The students, when
That's
we
just
were
so
remote.
beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Actually makes me want to cry. It's just so beautiful.
Aw. I can't tell you how it felt to be able to still experience the kindness campaign, even though we were having such a jumbled up school year. And the kids would look forward to it, kindergarten through 5th grade. And the 5th graders were excited to see themselves, but all of the little ones were excited to learn from the big ones. And so
Jared, did you want to ask? So I think Jared wants to ask you a question.
I was just complimenting how amazing that wall and how you use AR to make it very interactive. It just adds a whole nother depth and dynamic to your classroom. I might have to ask for some pointers for that because that is amazing. I love that.
So Jared's our curator for technology for our website. So for the new group. So I met him and tutored him in technology last year. Oh, actually this year. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And he's got a real passion of sharing technology with other pre-service teachers. Did you want to ask for some tips or anything in particular, Jared, that you're thinking that you want to unpack a bit more?
Oh, it'd be more just like what software did you use to make the QR codes to make the picture animated?
It's actually an Australian company, iJack app.
Oh.
So yeah. So super simple. And
awesome.
The kids did it themselves. It's just a process, but I'm about to write up this lesson in great detail, but it's also spelled out in that STEM article in your magazine.
Yeah, so the STEM Ed magazine, it's there as well.
Yeah.
Which I think you got a copy of the magazine, Jared. I think I gave you a copy.
Do.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll definitely
so
go and have
now
a
you're
look
getting
at
to meet the star of that section.
Oh my goodness.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
I think it's amazing. It's really exciting and energizing for me. And the kids were wowed by it. Absolutely wowed. So I think they're listening. It definitely got their attention. They want to see those faces come to life. And so what I did, this year, I set up my art room with this display because these are all of the kids graduated. So all those 5th graders that made the kindness campaign are in the middle school now, in 6th grade. So I found some of the ones that have little siblings still at the school. And so I made a little display of big brother and sister up here. And I figured this is where they line up at the end of the day. So I'll be scanning and let, big brother, big sister share a kindness message, which I think will really grab them and make them excited still. And then I've got posters that I made that help them express their feelings that are also set up with augmented reality. So we're going to keep on learning from these experiences throughout the year. At the beginning of our remote learning, I said that we started our theme song. So our theme song was really a class mantra. And the idea of a mantra is something that I'd been wanting to do for a long time. So in a mantra, the kids would start class by saying something all together. And then it would be full of affirmative or positive words to motivate them to get through class. And I just couldn't figure out a way to do it until last year when I framed it in my mind, we're having Fugle Vision for remote learning. So I am a interactive TV art teacher, and it's called Fugle Vision, and it needs a theme song. So I wrote a little mantra. I delivered it at first, but then the kids owned it, submitted little portions of it, and I put it together. And their video's bad or whatever. It's kind of backlit and all that stuff, but it became what we played at the beginning of every class. And because it was, you know, big brother and big sister, everybody loved it. Everybody spoke it along with it. And it helps set the tone for class every time. So here we go.
No matter how we gather, each one of you matter. And I'm so glad that we are here together.
Let's sharpen our pencils
As we sharpen our mind.
and remember to be
Creative and kind. It's a good decision to tune in to Fugle Vision. Fugle Vision. It's a good decision.
So in a way that helps set the tone for class, and we get all these positive faces and words, and it brought us together. And I used to film the kids singing it or saying it along, because that always just warmed my heart to see how much they were owning it. So this is my last point that I probably went over, sorry.
No, not
But
at all. Keep going. It's
the
fantastic.
last thing I wanted to share was my mental health goals, since we were talking about social emotional learning and teaching. I probably could do a whole presentation on how I'm feeling because it's such a crazy time for me and for so many other teachers. And I worked with a student teacher last year while I was remote, and thought a lot about what that's like to be brand new, and that's your introduction to teaching. And then during that period of time when I couldn't teach, I had to take a leave for a while. I surrendered my classroom to a teacher who just finished student teaching and went right into my room, and just had done her student teaching remotely. And so it had no practical time experience with materials or managing kids physically in person, and the whole school culture, all that. She just had to figure it out. And when I came back in May, she said something that just really stuck with me, because she was so authentic. She never pretended to have it all figured out, and she just kind of rolled with it. And so while I was reviewing with her, you know, some of the lessons that they had done in my absence, a first grader raised her hand and said, "Do you remember when you did I think it was a snowflake lesson. You did snowflakes and you did it all wrong and it broke?" And I looked at this lady's face and I expected that she would be embarrassed. Instead, she said immediately, she said, "Yes, I do remember that. Remember, I was learning alongside of you. And
That's
when
fantastic.
it broke, I realized how we should fix it. And then we all did." And I thought, I want to be that authentic. That's my goal, to be okay with getting it wrong sometimes and admitting it, and then working with the kids and just saying, you know what, we messed up.
It's fantastic. So Tricia, with my PhD, I looked at Dewey as the theorist, and he said the same thing back in 1919, that we as teachers should learn at the same time as students. So I became a bit of a risk taker at university, and I would go to tutorials and I wouldn't know the answer to things. And I was really intrigued to see what would happen, because I took the risk. And you know what happened? They took over, the pre-service teachers took over the tutorial. They were empowered. And they told me they were the best tutorials they had at the university, because we were learning together and they were in charge of their learning as well. So, and they were guiding me as well. And it really broke down a barrier. It was a bit of I felt at the time when I was doing it, I thought, oh my gosh, is this going to work? But it has actually worked. And I've been doing it now since 2016, I think. the interesting thing is when we get anonymous surveys from students, mine have gone through the roof across every subject I teach in, because I do the same thing in every subject. So that vulnerability, I think, is a really powerful tool as us as teachers to do, because I would never want to be the gatekeeper myself. I think being a gatekeeper where you're always in charge and people have to check with you on every step is a reason, as a sure formula to actually not want to be a teacher anymore, because you get too tired. So so that risk taking that new teacher's done, risk taking I did as a person who lectures at university, I think it's really powerful, and I'd encourage other people to have a go at it in their own classrooms.
Absolutely.
I just want to add as well, like to what Sandy's saying, like for teachers, for pre-service teachers in the classroom to learn with the tute. I want to add that I still think being the teacher and letting the students learn with you, that is, and I when you find out something that you didn't know and the students find interesting, it's like you get that more, like you said, authentic. It's a very authentic, like, epiphany of like, what, like, that is that what it is? That's why I really want to dive into these kind of subjects, or think of themes to link up with our key learning areas, to really make the teacher enjoy the teaching phase, because they're actually learning as well alongside the students.
And
So,
that's
yeah.
where it becomes fun. The learning
yes.
is fun.
Yeah.
And actually getting to the point where you're not just jumping through hoops, following directions, and you don't have the big picture, you don't have a lot of ownership. That's not fun. But when, you're on the journey alongside, that's where you can have some fun.
Because that's engagement, isn't it? What we're talking about. And when it's it's called mutual engagement. And when we've got mutual engagement, everyone succeeds. So it's a really interesting concept. Does anyone else have a question for Tricia before we wrap up for the Learning Circle? Because it's just fantastic. No?
No, I was just going to say thank you. Apologies for me being a bit late, but I've really enjoyed this. It's been a great another learning component for me. I definitely will add this to my teaching, make my own little twist with augmented reality. You've really just made it another level. Like, it's just like you can create your own materials to make it augmented reality. Like, I've only just dived into a merge cube, which is I think it was made in it's made in Texas, actually. It's from people, San Antonio. And it's basically the cube projects images or 3D views of certain like it went from buildings, like old buildings, to body parts, to machines. Like, it's all projected on a cube, but you've made it so it's like you made your own little material to make it projected, so it's like, again, authentic. And I love that so much. I definitely want to do that.
We don't know the reality of online teaching as well, and these guys will have to do prac online. So, so this is the thing, we've got to push into it then, and we've got to go, okay, well, let's be innovative. What can we do? We can go to Tricia. So thank you for your time today, Tricia. It's been wonderful. I find you globally, I think, are making a huge difference. I'm not sure if you realize that. So I always believe as a teacher, what matters is our impact, not us ourselves, but the impact that we can make for our students. And the impact you're making it's just amazing. So, and like I said before, I'm going to try and get things like your ideas into Nigeria, for example, and India and Pakistan, because knowledge should be free, and knowledge should be for everyone. So, and we shouldn't let the digital divide stop us from giving kids a chance to succeed. So, because then we all win. So, so thank you so much. And for those who are interested, on the 16th of September, we're going to have Kylie and Glenn from Splat 3D, and they teach also with mathematics and art and the whole idea of sketching 3D shapes. And that's really it's a genius invention, absolute genius invention. So thank you, everyone.